1843, a marvellous book was first launched, not in the version that we now know it today, but as a sort of noveletta thing, bit by bit, as it were. And it was put together and written and created by one of the greatest authors, in my opinion, of ever, Charles Dickens. And we're talking, of course, about the wonderful classic, A Christmas Carol. Now, for me, I have to say the best Christmas Carol would be starring Alistair Sim from 1951. I think it's the one, tell me if I'm right, chums, that when you sort of see it for the first time, it's what sticks in your brain. And I'd got no idea about the story, I just thought it was brilliant, and he came across absolutely amazingly in that role, so it's always stuck in it with that. What's interesting is the background to that particular story and how, well, the royals who shaped our Christmas, well, it didn't exactly go to plan the way that you may have thought. As ever, let me explain. I'm back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Are you ready for Christmas? Have you got your crackers out? Do you still buy crackers? No, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I like all of that stupidity, don't you? The paper hat, the cracker, the pulling of the wishbone. There's nothing wrong. It's good to be daft, and if you can't be daft on a celebratory day, when can you be? Christmas, you see, for everybody, when you think about it, was really set together by those very formal paintings at the time of Prince Albert and Queen Victoria. He'd imported a lot over from the Germanic background that he had. And, the Christmas card, I told you earlier this year how that was put together similarly because, people suddenly were able to afford, with a penny black, to start to sell Christmas cards and people were able to afford to send them. It's funny how it's got a full circle now, isn't it? You can buy the card, but now you can't afford the stamp, It's just mad, isn't it, when you think? But the story that I wanted to share with you today, which I found really interesting, was the fact that when you think about it, the royals have been very influential. And, when you look at today, Camilla, the Queen, well, she's got a royal reading room. And this is done incredibly well. It's not really as people just see it as pretentiousness. She's in getting books back into schools and children picking up books and reading books and adults getting back and buying, it's a very clever thing. In the digital world where everything gets removed, it's nice to see some sensibilities in there. But what was interesting was her former queen, Queen Victoria, also felt very much like this. She fell in love with A Christmas Carol, and in particular Charles Dickens himself. Not in the literal sense, of course, but she thought he was absolutely terrific. Went to see him perform alongside Prince Albert, and the bit that I found fascinating was, and I mentioned this before, years ago, if you got offered to meet the royals, this would have been a great stamp on your approval. But according to the history books, Charles Dickens didn't want to meet Queen Victoria, and she kept offering sort of all sorts of things, luncheons, readings, personal readings at Buckingham Palace of his latest book, which would have been great for publicity. But time and time again, he turned them down. And it took many, many years, in fact, before they met. Now, apparently the reason being is, and this is again, really, when you look at the bigger story, Queen Victoria insisted that A Christmas Carol was read by the teachers at Christmas time to teach children, particularly from the impoverished backgrounds like workhouses and things like that, the true meaning of Christmas, about forgiveness, about looking out into the bigger picture, moving forward, that sort of stuff. What people also don't realise is that Queen Victoria, alongside the royal staff, were very moved by this and this particular, she liked Charles Dickens because she felt that he gave her a window on what was really happening out there in the world. Remember, no internet, no telephone as such. So she thought, is this what's really going on? So she very much organised, parties for people, privately funded, food packages sent out. Nobody knew where they came from, but they were inside the royal palaces. Eventually, when both were getting on a little bit, and I found this fascinating, they eventually met. This is about 40 years down the line. And according to the history books, Charles Dickens really was completely enamoured by Queen Victoria. Not so much a fan of the royals, but loved Queen Victoria. Hence the reason he held back so long. When they had a meeting at that time, it was decreed that you couldn't sit down unless invited to do. And suddenly they got into this conversation and they both ended up standing for the duration. Very difficult apparently for Charles Dickens because he had a problem with his leg. The Queen, more fortunate because she could lean against a settee. tea, right? And what happened was they basically had this meeting and said, why did we leave it so long? We've clearly got a lot in common. Why didn't you get back to me earlier? And apparently he just blushed and said, I really couldn't divulge that secret, Mom. And she left it at that. Apparently she got no idea that he was that enamoured with her. She just thought he was being standoffish. But what she did like was the fact that he helped shape what we know to be, alongside the royals at that time, a very British Christmas. It's a lovely heartwarming story, yeah? Neil Sean, Kensington, London.